Peck, in his book, The Road Less Traveled, says in the very first sentence, life is difficult. There may be some of you in here today who are experiencing some of your own difficulties, whether it's troubled relationships, financial issues. You know, we've had a terrible economy that's hitting a lot of us. Whether you have an unexpected or chronic illness, or you might have a job you no longer love or maybe don't even have. When I was 40, in my 40s, I didn't think life was difficult. I had a wonderful marriage. I had a job I absolutely loved. I had a career and a profession in which I was respected. We had enough money to travel and buy nice clothes. And I had lots of friends. Sure, I had that same amount of stress. You know how you guys, sometimes you just feel like you got too much on your plate? Just a lot going on. I had that. But for the most part, it was good stuff. Till my husband, Charles, got a rare neurological disease that over 5 years, and he was 45 with his first symptom, 5 years, first took away his ability to read, to write, to walk, then to talk, and finally to take care of himself in any way. He was 50 when he died. That was in the year 2000. Now I knew that life was difficult. And this was not supposed to happen to us. We were only in our 40s. Well, I encourage you to go to the library or Borders and read the first page of Scott Peck's book, because he goes on to say that once we recognize that life is difficult, we can get through it. It's all in our expectations. We need to expect that bad things do happen. So tonight, I'd like to affirm you in your challenges as well as the nice opportunities that you have. And the way I'll do that is I'd like to share with you 3 affirmations that I hope will be helpful. I will illustrate them using a story from my personal life, and I'll also give you a personal and inspirational message to go with it. And my purpose is that this will help you get your hands around meaning in your life, in your work, your career, in your retirement, or in all the service that you do here at Rotary. I saw the whole list and from Marge, and it's amazing the amount of work you do for my community. I live here in South Portland, and I am thrilled when I see the work that you do, and I want to encourage you in that today. So let's make sure we all understand the word affirmation. You know what I'm talking about when I say that word. To me, it's just a positive statement. Now, it's meant to either inspire us to reach higher or to uplift us when we're down. Now, this concept of a positive statement, positiveness, has quite a bit of research recently in this whole idea of positive psychology. Barbara Fredrickson, in this book, Positivity, she's a research psychologist, PhD, and she has found that we need 3 positives for every negative in our life. 3 positives for every negative. Now, you might say, well, wouldn't it be great to have more positives? Well, you can, but if you didn't have any negatives, life wouldn't be really realistic, would it? But what happens if you have too many negatives? Get depressed, right? And that's not so good either. So we're looking for the positives, and that's what I think that affirmations can do. They can change our perspective, make us more hopeful, more positive, and thereby help affirm our uniqueness. Now, we can wait for others to affirm us, and that happens in a group like this maybe, but how long are you going to have to wait for someone to really affirm you? Typically, it doesn't come very quickly, does it? Or you can affirm yourself. And that's what I hope to inspire you to do today. So the first affirmation I'd like to share with you is this: I reach my goals with determination. Now, we all have had goals. I know everyone in here has had some kind of goal during their life, whether it's to lose weight, exercise, reduce their cholesterol, or just clean out their garage. But we're not so good as a society in really reaching the goals. But the story I have from my husband, Charles, is one of the most inspirational that I think I can share with you. Charles had decided, when he was still well, this disease hadn't come up yet, he had decided he was going to run every day. And this was going to be his daily personal victory. Now, some of you may have heard that term. It's from Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And Stephen Covey talks about having one thing each day that we have control over. So if everything else falls apart, we've got one success. And for Charles, it was going to be to run. Well, every goal that you set is going to get tested. That's why it's so hard to reach it, right? The first test Charles had when he still was well, he flew out to some sort of business meeting and he forgot his running shoes. Well, that didn't stop him. He ran 3 miles in his street shoes. Now the neurological disease starts to happen, and he takes a trip abroad to speak, comes home, goes to work the very next day. He was a workaholic because that was his place to help people. Well, he passed out. He hit his head on the desk and had to go into the hospital for stitches. And the doctor said to him, "Charles, you are exhausted. You need to go home and rest for a couple of days." What did Charles do that night? He went for his run, his daily personal victory. Well, we lived in an older neighborhood in Massachusetts at the time, and we had a lot of those uneven sidewalks. And one night Charles had run, and he came home, and he had fallen. And with this disease, you've seen people that have a movement disorder. You can't catch yourself. And so he had scrapes all the way down his face and the side of his body. Well, when that happened a second time, no more running on the streets on his own. So we had to think of a solution. We tried a treadmill, but he couldn't keep up with the belt. So we decided, well, let's go to the high school track, because that's a smooth surface. So we went there, and he was successful there for a while. Then he started to fall there. Well, now I'm really discouraged. I mean, he was keeping track of this in his time system. This was so important to him. But now what are we going to do? He's fallen, running on the track. Well, that's when we realized that in order for him to continue this goal, he was going to have to rely on someone else. And that meant I ran with him at home holding his arm. And we recruited other people whenever he traveled. Well, then his body got so stiff with this disease, all the muscles tightened, and the neck muscle tightened to where his head was extended back, taking his stability and his balance way off. And running with him, I thought, oh, this is getting scary. We're going to both go down. So yet another loss. I had to convince him that walking could count as his daily personal victory. And then the only way we were able to keep doing that was at 5:30 in the morning, because he was still going to work. We would go up to the local grocery store. He'd hold on to the shopping cart. I'd hold his arm, and we'd walk around the parking lot. The shopping cart giving him the only thing with enough stability to keep walking. Well, my heart broke. He had 2 hospital stays in 1 month, and things were declining fast. And I realized there's no way we can keep going. But Charles had accumulated 1,675 consecutive days of running or walking. His daily personal victory was finally beaten by this terrible neurological disease, but not without one of the best efforts, right, of someone that I've ever seen sticking steadfastly to their goal. Well, it wasn't easy for Charles to stick with his goal, and it's not going to be easy for you to stick with yours. Could you take your worksheet, and if you need a pen, my friend Nancy can get you one. We're just going to work on the worksheet because I just want you to internalize some of this. Jot down a goal you have, if you could. One that you've recently set up or one you're thinking about. Just take a second to do that. I'm not going to give you a lot of time to do your worksheet, but just a short period of time. You can do some more at home when you want to think about it. Now, for my inspirational thought for you here, Paul J. Meyer. He was a millionaire at the age of 27 from a sales career. Here's the quote he said: 90% of those who fail were not actually defeated. They simply quit. So I'd like you to think about not only what your goal is, but what obstacles are you going to have that's going to either want to make you quit or just not reach that goal. And take a moment to think about that obstacle and then how you're going to overcome the obstacle. So you're going to be prepared to overcome that. For instance, if your goal is to start running, you're going to think about, well, I'm not going to have time. Well, how are you going to deal with the fact you're not going to have time? Maybe you'll schedule that in your calendar. And then now I want you to know that that goal that you wrote down is going to get tested. Adversity is going to try to sidetrack you. But when it does, I hope you'll think back to this story of Charles with this neurological disease making him so rigid and him continuing to jog and walk and be determined to reach your goals. And know that every time that you reach a goal and overcome an obstacle, that's increasing your level of positives, which is giving you that better balance in your life. Affirm yourself to reach your goals. Well, in addition to reaching your goals, the second affirmation that I have for you is one that is pretty understood in a group like this, so I'm just trying to affirm you in it. It is, I will mentor others, as even the smallest support can change a life. Well, let me tell you the story of Charles here on this one. First of all, Charles, as I've mentioned, was just one of those compassionate leaders, and his mission was to make a difference in people's lives. That's what he was all about. So he was a vice president of a small company, and he would go back to the plant where he started and visit the people there and try to mentor and encourage them. And one example, there were many, but one is Rob. Rob had come to work for this manufacturing company, having been a guitarist in a rock band. And I don't even think he had his high school diploma. Now, Charles started to see some real potential in Rob and tried to develop that. And when Rob turned 40, Charles encouraged him to get a college degree. Do you know that Rob not only did that, but after Charles died, Rob went on and got his master's of business? Well, Charles would take people like Rob with him whenever Charles would speak and let them share a little bit of their side of the story of working at this company. You can just imagine Charles's greatest source of pride was taking Rob to a conference in Chicago where then President Clinton attended. And he watched Rob have a dialogue about employee ownership and the culture at their company directly with the President of the United States.